of the document. You're not recopying the document. You're not quoting whole swaths of document. You're not re-summarizing the document and essentially restating what the author said. You're getting the gist, something useful, something relevant, but something simple from each of the documents. So let's go through each document, all right? Document 1, Josiah Strong. And here's the thing. If you hear these names enough, you'll be able to recognize their names and know who they are and what they stand for. Like when I see Josiah Strong, I automatically know he's going to be talking about America as an imperialist country and God. I know he's going to be talking about God because he's a reverend. So, what is the gist of what Josiah Strong is saying in our country? Allison.
The Anglo-Saxon race was meant by God to spread His liberty, Christianity, and civilization over the earth through, he argued it through his book, Our Country.
Simplify it. That was like all over the place. Just don't look at it. Tell me what he meant.
We were destined by God to spread our civilization everywhere.
There you go. That's it. The U.S. Don't say we. Okay? The U.S. All right? Third person. Destined by God to spread our superior civilization to the rest of the world. Rock. Listen. All right. Let's see here. Document 2. Now, we know that Mahan wrote The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. This document does not come from that book. This snippet comes from another book that he wrote called The Interest of America in Sea Power, which I can only assume is a rehashing of the same ideas from Influence of Sea Power Upon History. But Influence of Sea Power Upon History was written in the early 1890s. What is the gist of what Mahan is driving at in this document? Yes, Laser. Please tell me where in that document it talks about the Navy. Give me the line that makes reference to the Navy. Ah, okay, Kramer. Yeah, it's very simple. America needs to exert its influence. America needs to expand. It doesn't really go much further than that. Okay? Now, you could infer that it requires strong naval presence, since the title of the book is Sea Power, the interest of America in sea power. You could infer that what he's driving at is, America needs a strong Navy in order to expand its influence. But really what he's saying here is America needs to expand its influence. Do your thing. All right. Do your thing. All right. Document 3. Here you go. It's McKinley. He's pacing the floor.
Saying Christians need to be Christianized.
Well, yeah, saying Christians need to be Christianized. What is his gist here? Yeah.
That the United States has no other option but to intervene and take over and run the Philippines.
Yeah, that's exactly it. This is the only option left for America. America has to intervene on behalf of the Philippines. Whether it's to provide them religion or provide them guidance, or the fact that they are too foreign to be able to govern themselves. This is William McKinley at his, what's the word I'm looking for? Amerocentric best. makes several. Okay, great. Here, Prada. Here, it's gonna be one of those days. I can tell. The in, the out, the in, the out. All right. We could, and think about it. We could leave them go. We could leave the Philippines go, but that would be a disaster. If we don't take them, what does McKinley argue? If we don't take them,
They'll collapse.
well, perhaps.
If they go to themselves, they'll collapse. Go to anarchy. We can't let them go back to the Spanish because that would be wrong.
Right. And he also says we could not turn them over to France or Germany. So what's he saying? Exactly. We got to do this before anybody else gets their hands on it. Better we have our hands on it than somebody else we don't trust. Absolutely. All right, so there are a number of factors driving McKinley, but McKinley generally is pro-imperialist and pro-taking over the Philippines. Document 4, U.S. Senator George F. Hoare. What's the gist of what he is saying? Nadia. Yeah, it is exactly. Taking the Philippines violates the fundamental principles outlined in the Declaration of Independence. Fundamental principles of, oh, for God's sake, just make up something.
Freedom and liberty.
Freedom and liberty. Yeah, come on, those old chestnuts. Drag them out. Yeah. And by the way, George F. Hoare, enjoy this. His middle name, Frisbee. I kid you not, Frisbee.
Wow. Frisbee.
George Frisbee Hoare. Enjoy. Oh, and back in the day, king of the mutton chops. He was rocking the mutton
His
chops.
parents hated him.
So anyway, all right. So you've got some people arguing that America has a right, a duty, if you will, to go out into the world and take its rightful place among the world powers. That we have a Christian duty to help undergird and promote the civilization of people who are less than Americans. But then you've got people like Hoare saying, this violates our fundamental principles. It violates who we are. To which I then ask George Frisbee Hoare, where were you when we were taking Texas or California or Oregon or subjugating the Native Americans? Wasn't that violating our principles?
Was he a senator then?
He was representative. I mean, around the time of the Indian Wars. I mean, he died in 1920, 22, 23, somewhere in that ballpark. He was an old guy. I mean, it's funny. I actually looked him up just to see who this guy was. And you look at the pictures when he started in Congress, and then middle of his career, and then later in his career. And it's interesting to watch him age. So he goes from having dark hair to having the gray hair with the mutton chops to shaving the mutton chops off and just being an old fat guy. Yeah. That's a great question. And let's posit that for discussion. Why does it become more controversial when we get off the North American continent, when we start going into the Pacific, when we start going into the Caribbean, when we start going into Latin America? Why is it now all of a sudden more controversial? Yeah.
It's not a dumping ground for excess population, because you could always move west and easily get there, but it's harder to get to the other islands.
Okay, perhaps harder to get to the other islands. I don't know. Go ahead, Alita.
Oh, I was just gonna say, because we were taking all this, but we were never intending for Americans to colonize there. We were just kind of like, hey,
Okay.
Sort of
Well,
what
I mean, is there a
Alex said.
difference between, and it's a really good question. Is there a difference between taking, buying Louisiana, taking Texas, taking California, Oregon? Is there a difference between that and taking the Philippines, taking Puerto Rico, taking Guam, taking Hawaii? Why does this seem to be so much more controversial? Go ahead.
Maybe because we know it as those being part of the U.S. and those being so further off and distant.
The foreignness. Yeah, I think that's really. I think you're right on the money there. I think the foreignness of. They want you guys. Okay. I think the foreignness of venturing beyond the North American boundaries is what's driving this. I also, and I know Nadia just left, and it was her question, but I really do think that there's a racial component here.
Of course, there's a racial.
I mean, when you're taking over North America, you're clearing that out for white people. I mean, really, that's what Manifest Destiny was all about. Clearing out the North American continent for the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. But are you intending to clear out the Philippines? Are you intending to clear out Puerto Rico or the Hawaiian Islands? I don't think so. So then, what is the fear? Is there the fear that the Filipinos are going to come to America? That the Puerto Ricans are going to come to America? That Hawaiians are going to come to America? That they're going to intermarry, intermingle? I really do think that there is a racial component to the fear in the late 19th century. That was a good question. All right. The ever-refreshing Albert Beveridge. Document 5. What's the gist of what Beveridge is saying? Yeah.
Capturing and using the Philippines as a route to the Chinese markets with the Orient is an opportunity that the United States cannot pass up.
Okay, so imperialism is going to lead to economic opportunity. This is a way for America to sell goods and become a preeminent economic and world power. Beveridge is an unapologetic imperialist. He believes that America is destined to be the greatest nation on the face of the earth that ever lived. Didn't mean to get all Sean Hannity on you there, but yeah, he is unapologetic about it. Yeah.
How many people do we have in like Congress and Senate now, or House of Reps that's like that?
What, like Beveridge?
Yeah.
This is an antiquated idea. The idea of America taking territory. You don't hear that anymore. That idea kind of dies with World War I. But the idea of America being the indispensable power, of being the dominant power that needs to be the country that's there overseeing the decision making around the world because everybody else is too stupid to be able to make decisions. I would say that attitude prevails in Congress. I mean, after all, why are we sticking our nose in Syria? Why are we sticking our nose in Libya? Why are we sticking our nose in the Ukraine? Why are we sticking our nose in Iran and North Korea? Because we believe that if we don't do it, nobody will. And if we don't control the situation globally, we're not going to be successful economically. I really do think that American economics drives foreign policy. It drives foreign policy here. It drives foreign policy today.
I'm sorry.
So I would say that there are those in Congress. I would say the majority of Congress today believes that America is an indispensable power, and that American foreign foreign affairs definitely influence our economic success. So, I mean, we're in Syria. I mean, that's kind of the center of the oil production. We're interested in, Libya because we're, concerned about weapons of mass destruction getting into the hands of terrorists, and terrorist activity disrupts economic activity. We're interested in what's going on in the Ukraine. I mean, I know that's a relatively new thing that's popped up, but that's really a battle between who's got more influence. The Western European economic powers, of which the United States also includes itself, or Russia. It's a tug of war. Ukraine is essentially the rope in a tug of war between Russia and the United States. And half the Ukraine wants to go with Western Europe, half the Ukraine wants to be more Russian. And that goes all the way back. I'm not getting into Russian history, but that goes all the way back to how, what the Ukraine is. Half the Ukraine used to be part of Poland prior to World War II. So it's got a Western European viewpoint. Half the Ukraine used to be part of Russia, used to be part of the Soviet Union.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
You're talking about, like, how we're in other places.
Mhm.
Well, did you see, I was watching Fox News the other day.
That's fine. Go ahead.
I saw that the talks between Al Qaeda and the United States have ended when it comes to, like, the prisoners they have and our people.
Okay.
And I was wondering if you heard anything about that.
I hadn't heard anything about
Yeah, I
that.
was just very much.
I know that we're in Afghanistan having talks with Al Qaeda. Actually, the Taliban.
With the Taliban.
Yeah, two different entities. Okay.
We're talking to the Taliban.
Yeah, we're talking to the Taliban in Afghanistan because, look, they're a reality. They're there. You can't ignore them. You can't, put your head in the sand and, hide under a pile of coats and hope everything works out in the morning. They're there. They're a reality. So how are you going to make the best of that situation? When we leave at the end of 2014, when we leave Afghanistan at the end of 2014, the Taliban's still going to be there. So what role will they play? That's called realpolitik. It's not ideal. It's just the reality. You got to work with what's there, not what you want to work with. The ideal for Afghanistan is that it becomes a flourishing democracy with a stable middle class. But the reality is you've got warring factions, you've got this quasi-religious group, the Taliban, and the number one export from Afghanistan is heroin. So that's the reality.
Isn't that from heroin?
Yes.
Plants?
What? Comes from poppy plants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it sounds like really dumb, but like what
No, you're not. Go
what
ahead.
actually is like the Taliban?
The Taliban is a religious group in Afghanistan that believes in Islamic law being the law of the land. They want how we have a separation of church and state? They want church and state to be completely married together. So they want the laws of Afghanistan to be based off the Quran, which is the holy book of Islam. So yeah, they want a complete marriage of that. And they're a really orthodox group. I mean, they read this stuff literally. All right. So the ever-refreshing Albert beverage. All right. Henry Cabot Lodge, document 6. What's the gist of what Lodge is saying? Allison.
He's under the impression that every territory controlled by America is thankful and like under shelter, even though they don't want us there.
They may not want us there, but they're going to thank us for being there. Because we're going to provide them a better future than they could provide for themselves or anybody else could provide for them. Absolutely. They may not like it, but the freedom and liberty that America will imbue in this territory will pay off dividends later on. Yeah. All right, and then document 7, the Anti-Imperialist League, the Super Friends. Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice. The Anti-Imperialist League.
Where did you get that from?
What? Meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice. It's from a show called The Super Friends in the 1970s. It was a cartoon. I used to watch it all the time. And it would, they'd be, have a scene, and then it would, they'd flash back to the Hall of Justice where the Super Friends hung out. And so the narrator would say, meanwhile, back at the Hall of Justice.
Okay.
Yeah, you had a narrator for the show.
And that has to.
Has nothing to do with this. Nothing at all. It's just my attempt to add a little humor to an otherwise extraordinarily dry topic.
Thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. All right. So the Anti-Imperialist League, what's the gist of what they're saying? Anybody? Bueller? Yeah.
I believe that America has no domineering.
Why?
They believe it goes against the Constitution.
Goes against the Constitution, goes against the Declaration of Independence. I like how they cite Abraham Lincoln. No man is good enough to govern another man without that other's consent. So yeah, all right. So cool. We got the gist of the documents. And as long as you can get the gist of the documents, you can use those gists to help reinforce the argument that you're creating. I would also argue that document 6, Henry Cabot Lodge, is the answer to document 4. Document 6 and document 4 are having a conversation. Even though they're not in the room together, and even though they're not at the same time, those two documents are having a conversation. What is the conversation? Yeah.
The argument made by Ford is that the United States is being hypocritical in going into the Philippines against the Declaration of Independence.
Yep.
And Lodge is saying that we are not doing anything wrong, and that it will lead to the Philippines greater good.
That the Declaration of Independence will be a benefit. The ideas in so they're using the Declaration of Independence as the vehicle for their argument. Horst says it violates the Declaration of Independence. Lodge says, no. The ideas contained in the Declaration of Independence are going to benefit these people. So the documents across time and space are having a conversation with one another. Okay? Now, I will give you this piece of advice. Now, I will give you this piece of advice. When they make a document-based question, you've got to remember, those documents don't just appear out of nowhere. They don't just miracle themselves into existence. They don't just take 8 random documents or 9 random documents and throw them on paper. The people who write the questions pick and choose the documents on purpose to get you to think about the question. The first document is always what I call the catch-all document. It's the document that makes you think about the question in general. Then, document B and C are usually paired together, like they converse with one another. Document D and E converse with one another. And then document E and F converse with one another. Or document F may converse with document C. But they pick and choose the documents on purpose to get you to think about it, all sides of the question. Okay? So I want you to keep that in mind when you actually look at a document-based question. Okay.
No, done over that?
Okay. So are there any questions about the homework? How many people felt good just getting the gist? Okay. All right. noticed from grading the other classes' homework, getting the gist is easy. Figuring out how to make the gist a part of an argument, that's a little bit more complex. But getting the gist is really something, that's the first step. Okay? So if we can get the gist, that's good. Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm done with my alphabet.
Fantastic.
I don't know about the rest of it.
I love it. I love it. So efficient.
Good job, Miss Sullivan. My favorite kind of music.
Yes.
Is it just me, or does like every president that we consider to be like an intellectual or smart in any way either he's assassinated or just locked out by Congress?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Being an extremely smart man does not necessarily mean you're going to be a successful president. I would say the best quality for a president is understanding people. And you don't need to be a genius to understand people. Ronald Reagan understood people. Bill Clinton understood people. Jimmy Carter, he was a nuclear physicist, didn't understand people. I would argue Barack Obama doesn't understand people. He's an intellectual, and that's fine. Being an intellectual is fine, but I just don't think he understands people. John Quincy Adams spoke 5 languages, didn't understand people. I would say, though, that the best intellectual president we've had was Thomas Jefferson. There's a man who was an intellectual who understood people. That's a rarity. Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln had a 2nd grade education.
What about Garfield?
Garfield was a brilliant man. Garfield, the problem with Garfield was, I mean, he was assassinated, so you didn't really get an opportunity to hear what he would have done, but what he was proposing to do was very controversial. He was the one who was saying, look, if you want a government job, you've got to get that government job on merit, not because of who you know. And that was going to challenge the Republican political machines and the Democratic political machines. So if Garfield had lived, I don't know how far he would have gotten with Congress. That's why I say the best thing to come out of the Garfield assassination was, oh, holy crap, maybe we should do something about government jobs and whether you're qualified or not, because you wind up with a guy who's assassinated because he didn't give somebody a job. But Garfield was a minister, and he was a college professor. So he was a bright guy. He was a bright guy. But like Teddy Roosevelt was another intellectual who understood people. But the idea of the intellectual who understands people is a rarity. Your best presidents. George Washington, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Abraham Lincoln, self-taught. Wilson was too smart for his own good. Franklin Roosevelt would be the first to tell you he wasn't smart. Franklin Roosevelt achieved what he achieved because he had money. Because his mom had money. That's where he got it. He inherited it.
Thanks, Mom.
Harry Truman had a high school education, but understood people. Let's see. Reagan. Reagan was not exactly the sharpest knife in the drawer, but understood people. Bill Clinton is an intellectual who understands people. But Bill Clinton's got too many character flaws. I mean, he's got way too many character flaws to be successful. Or at least he did not live up to expectations. All right. Okay, so let's see here. Wow, this logged out, didn't it? Okay, 8:42. All right. Boy, they're taking forever. Doing this 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
I have a question that's not APUSH.
Go ahead.
Economics.
Yeah. Don't know who's teaching it yet.
Yeah, but is that one class or 2 classes?
It's one class.
Because they had it listed as macro and micro as individual classes.
I understand that.
Yeah.
It's one class.
Okay.
One semester is micro, another semester is macro. It's one class.
They put me in micro.
But not macro?
Yeah, same here.
You probably just got those ladies in there killed. Good job, Michael.
Not Miss Old.
Jesus, Miss Sullivan's
She's already
already
gone.
gone. She's like, I'm gonna
Get out of there.
She made it out.
Miss Barrel and everyone else in there is gonna be about to get shot. Hear some screaming here soon.
Somebody cover your ears. Think about it. Bomb dropping.
The schedule I got for this semester was completely different than what they said it was going to be. Like, you know how you got that like, semester week? The schedule that I got for this semester is completely different.
I'm trying to be a reread this year. I'm trying to take sort of standard English. Yeah, I'm taking one class.
Okay. And like, oh, they do run it.
No, I'm taking AP Lit every other day. Only class. Now,
Yeah, it's like we might run down three, we might run later, whatever.
All right. Problem
Tim,
fixed.
you changed
It's 1 year class. 1 year class. All right. Am I still recording?
Yeah.
Oh my God. All right.
Oh wow, we all just talked and oh my God, I said some interesting things.
Fantastic. Oh, just great. Fantastic.
Sorry,
All right.
people.
So here's what I would like you to do. I would like you to make sure that your name is on that assignment, and 1B, please. Rip it off the documents. There you go. And pass it on up.
I'm skilled.
Yeah. Rip theirs too. Sure. There you go. Officer thinking. All right. For your own edification.
You know, this is the first 6 weeks that we have until we have another break.
Dude, we need this.
Oh,
We've
yeah,
had
I know.
too many breaks.
Mr. Smith.
Yeah,
Mr.
whatever.
Smith, you know, this is like the longest stretch this year that we've had uninterrupted, if it goes uninterrupted.
I mean, what, is this the 5th day I've been with you people? For the second semester?
Yes.
All right.
At least the first.
All right.
Hopefully no more snow. Oh, I heard about this.
All right, we're going to put everything away. We're going to shut me off.
Oh, darn it.
Bye.
Monday, I'm not.
That's why you were so happy.